What's up, G's? I'm back with another reaction video, and today I'm going to be reacting to building a DC Rivals roster. If you haven't already watched my reactions to Danboy Wonder's Ben 10 Marvel Rival rosters videos, those will be linked in the description if you guys want to watch those after the video. And also, I made my own Mortal Kombat Marvel Rivals roster, so if you want to watch that, that will also be in the description. I'm interested to see if his is any different from Danboy Wonder's roster video. This video is by Treo Boyo 17, so let's see what he has to say about the DC Rivals rosters.
Season 1 of Marvel Rivals just started, and I'm really loving it. I'm having a ton of fun with the new maps and characters, and with this game's success, it's gotten me thinking what an equivalent could look like for the DC Comics universe.
Right.
DC games haven't really been hitting the mark as of late,
Marvel
like with last year's
Rivals,
Suicide Squad game, but the world of DC is so wide and varied, both with landmark cultural icons like Superman and Batman, but also lesser knowns that could easily fill out a 6v6 hero shooter and be the perfect project to kickstart a new era for DC games. And so this is how I would make DC
what we thought
Rivals.
Multiverses was gonna be.
To do another Marvel Rivals video yet, but yeah, I think I'm gonna double dip from that well. Marvel Rivals has an insane cast of 35 characters, with more being added every season. And so to try and do the same thing for DC, I need a way to easily organize all my ideas. Which is why this video is brought to you by Notion. Most of the time when it comes to sponsors, they
damn ad. Okay.
$1 a month. Now, DC actually has made a 6v6 hero shooter before, years before Marvel Rivals or even Overwatch.
Really?
Gotham City Imposters was developed by Monolith Productions.
I forgot about Gotham City Imposters.
And was a first-person 6v6 team shooter that was set in the
game was
DC
okay
universe.
underrated.
Except instead of playing as DC's
they
iconic heroes, you played as some random
Batman
guys.
and
One
Joker
team was a bunch
clones.
of amateur vigilantes dressed as Batman, and the other was a team of criminals dressed as the Joker. Imposters, if you will. You could use gadgets like grappling hooks and gliders and roller skates, and even build your own character.
This game was cool, bro. I wish I would have played it when it was alive.
I mean, chances are you've never even heard of it. Not to mention, it released right in the middle of the Batman Arkham era, so not many people were clamoring to play as a random guy in a bat costume. I don't think the servers for that game work anymore. They could just be
hold the hell up that game.
Guy in a bat costume. Servers were shut down in July of 2014, just 2 years after release, meaning that the game is effectively lost to the ages. Monolith would then go on to develop the Shadow of Mordor series and the upcoming Wonder Woman game that we still know nothing about. So DC's first foray into the team shooter genre wasn't really a hit. But what could a more traditional hero shooter in the same vein as Overwatch and Marvel Rivals look like for the DC universe? The first thing to think about when building this sort of game is how do we make it specific to DC? Now, you could just make it a reskin of Marvel Rivals. I mean, hell, half the cast would work for that. But despite being superhero worlds, there's enough to differentiate them and help make this game stand apart. And also, like, make this video a little more interesting. There are a lot of different things you could do. You could just amp the gameplay up to 11 and really showcase how powerful some of these characters are and make the maps huge. I'm picturing Metropolis or Gotham or even Apocalypse being these sprawling spaces with multiple objectives at once, which would let characters like Kryptonians or Speedsters have an advantage and get to the points faster. Maybe there could be like a weakness system where each character has a type and there's kind of like a Pokemon style rock, paper, scissors element to it. But that would get very complicated very fast and throw too much of a wrench into the style of competitive game, which is supposed to be simple. So instead, I think the best option would be to take what Marvel Rivals is doing with the team-ups and do something similar. But instead of just having a couple pairings that give different effects, focus the team-ups on the teams. You could still have your smaller team-ups like the World's Finest, but imagine you have a team that fully consists of original Justice League members, and you get rewarded with a boost in health and damage, or maybe some extra moves for doing that. Or you could have a whole team of the Bat Family, or the Teen Titans, or the Legion of Doom, or maybe even a full team of Lanterns. When it comes to the story, I like how Season 1 of Rivals is solely focused on the Fantastic Four and the street-level heroes fighting against Dracula and the vampires, and including newer comic elements like the Stark Sentinel. And so each season of DC Friends could do something similar and focus on a different side of the universe. If there is some kind of weakness mechanic, they could pull from Tower of Babel by Mark Waid and Howard Porter, where Batman's contingency plans for the Justice League got leaked and used against them. Except maybe it gets bigger and more cosmic than that. Maybe Darkseid gets a hold of them and creates an entirely new universe with that information, sort of like what he did to create the new Absolute Universe. Or we could just do Crisis for like the 50th time. I guess that works too. But all right, let's finally get talking about the roster. Starting with the big dogs themselves, DC's Trinity. The first being Superman. Superman to me seems like an obvious tank character. I mean, he's literally called the Man of Steel. I think it would be really fun if they made him like a flying tank, sort of like Iron Man, floating in the skies and using his heat vision distracting the line of fire. Maybe they can make him a dive tank, give him a dive bomb like Venom or Captain America, and when he's on the ground, he becomes a melee fighter like the Hulk. He could use his ice breath to freeze people, and as a tank, I think it could be really fun if he had an ability that would shield his teammates from damage. Not with some magic spheres, but he literally basically rushes to them and wraps them around with his cape. And for his ultimate, you could just give him Doomfist, where he just goes into the sky and slams into the ground, or you could do something with the Solar Flare ability that was introduced in 2015. Next is Wonder Woman. For Diana, you could make her either a tank or a duelist. She's one of the greatest warriors
I feel
in
like
the
she
DC
makes sense
universe,
for a
so
tank. I
would
feel
make
like
sense on paper. But as a tank, you could do
is
some
sort
really
of
fun
like
stuff
a
using her bracelets and defending your teammates. And maybe if you block
basis
enough,
for
you
some
can
of the
release that energy
characters'
out into a shock.
roles.
That's basically how she works in Multiverses, a game that only 6 people still play. And she's called a tank in that game, so fuck it, we're going tank. Her lasso could be just your regular.
It's
hook
1,000
pole,
right
but maybe
now,
she
so
could
fuck
use it to
you.
throw people up
It's not
into the air
6.
or even off of ledges, or maybe even as a
Marvel.
castle. In her ultimate, she could pull out her sword and shield and basically.
If Multiverses has 10 players, I'm one of the players. If Multiverse says 1 player, I'm that 1 player. If Multiverse says no players, I don't exist.
Become a cross between Magic and Captain America. I know there's a lot of conversation about the sword and shield versus the lasso for Diana, and a lot of people have very strong opinions. Me personally, I prefer the lasso, so I'd want that to be her main moveset, but I still think there's room for the sword and shield so long as she's not, you know, cutting off heads and shit.
Ugh.
And then we have Batman, the Caped Crusader, DC's golden boy who gets all the spotlight and has billions of fans around the world and will most definitely drive
Try and
countless
make the
people to
lasso
play
like
this
an
game. Make him a
ability.
support. I'm serious, make him a
Okay.
strategist. There's been a lot of discourse lately
Are you
about
sure about
people
that?
insta-locking DPS characters in Marvel Rivals, especially in solo queue, and that leading to the whole team losing the match. And I get that it's
True.
frustrating, but if you ask me, that kind of just comes with this type of game. I don't think it's some malicious decision from people to fuck over.
you-
all the
if you
healers.
make
I mean, like, I
Batman
played
a
Overwatch
strategist,
in
they go
2016
play
and it was the same
Batman.
Conversation. The reality is that characters like Spider-Man, Iron Man, Black Panther, and Punisher are just more popular. The game is free to play, so there are going to be a lot of casual players.
Yeah.
And if you have Spider-Man in a game, you're
They
going to have people
definitely
who just
hold
want to
the
play as
strategist
Spider-Man.
roster.
And so the solution
Rocket
to that
Raccoon
is to
and
put
Adam
those
Warlock
super
are like
popular
the best
characters like
ones.
Batman in the strategist role. At first, it would make sense to make Batman a duelist. You know, you could just copy the moveset from Moon Knight and you're good. But Batman, above all else, is a master detective and strategist, so it honestly kind of makes sense. You could still give him that same kind of mobility. He
But
could
what
grapple
would his
and glide
heals
around
be,
and even
though?
throw batarangs. But maybe his other abilities use his tech to heal his teammates and control the
Okay.
battlefield instead of purely
Heck,
just doing
yeah.
damage. You know, make him sort of like a mix between Moon Knight and Adam Warlock. Also, I'm sorry, it would just be very funny to see Batman fans have to play healer. When it comes to the rest of the Justice League, I could see Green Lantern being a really fun tank character. You could give him
Yeah.
a big Reinhardt shield and put bubbles around his teammates. What might be kind of cool is maybe he starts with a lot of construct armor on him and he's this big bulky tank. But then as he takes damage, those pieces break off and he gets smaller but more mobility. And his ultimate could supercharge him with the lantern
That'd
and
be
make him
cool.
even tankier. I would definitely want to see multiple Green Lanterns on the roster. Games like Injustice always make characters like Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart swappable skins, but they all have such different personalities and that
Yeah.
applies to their constructs. John was an architect in the military, whereas someone like Kyle Rayner is an artist. And Simon Baz has a gun.
Okay.
Or had a gun. I think he got rid of it. For the Flash, I think it would be really fun to treat him sort of like Spider-Man, a duelist character with a really high skill floor, but the potential to do a lot of damage in the right hands, especially in the backline and picking off healers. He could throw lightning, maybe he has abilities that use the Speed Force to slow enemies down, like that one move from Injustice, or is able to give his team a bit of a movement boost, sort of like Jeff's Bubbles or Storm. I thought about making him a support for the same reason as Batman, and it would be really fun if he could like heal people by running to the nearest health pack and bringing it back to them. So maybe he has like a getaway move that he can do, and that's like on a really long cooldown for that. I always prefer Wally West as a Flash, but they could have a lot of fun with the costumes, having some skins with entirely different voice
Yeah.
lines, like the Premier skins from Injustice, which I'd love to see in Rivals. Like it'd be really fun to play as
That
Barry
would
or
be dope.
Jay or even Reverse Flash. Although I think I would become the most toxic person on the planet if I could play as Eobarthon, so maybe not. Like I would bully everybody on that team. One of my favorite DC characters and someone that I'll always try to put in any roster I can, and that's Black Canary. Depending on who you ask, Dinah Laurel Lance is one of the best hand-to-hand
Mid.
fighters in the DC universe. Definitely have a power scaling conversation in the comments that always
She's
goes well. But
definitely
she
like
could be a really
the-
fun brawler type of character in the similar vein to Iron Fist.
like
You could give her
Sindel
like a little
mixed with
flip that
Black
lets her dodge
Widow.
attacks like Star-Lord. And maybe her Canary Cry could have different effects depending on the pitch. One that does damage, one that stuns, and another that launches you back. And you know I can't talk about Canary without bringing in my boy, Green Arrow. I was originally going to say that he and Canary should be like a dual slot like Cloak and Dagger, but then I realized
He's
a
literally
character that could
Hawkeye.
switch between Hawkeye and Iron Fist would make people shoot me down in the street, so maybe not. During the last season, Hawkeye was one of the most powerful and hated characters in the community, and while he got slightly tuned for this season, it wasn't the massive nerf that some people were hoping for. Personally, I'm glad about that. One, because I like playing Hawkeye, but also I don't want to see Rivals adopt the Overwatch method of nerfing everybody until it's not fun anymore. Like a big part of
Yeah.
these games is learning and adapting, and instantly nerfing everything just is not the way to
You
go, in
shouldn't
my
be
opinion. But I do still get
nerf-
that the
you
Hanzo
shouldn't really
Archer
be
type of
nerfing
character can be
characters, you should be
frustrating, especially
buffing
getting one-shotted from
the
across the map. And
bad
so I think I
characters.
found the solution. Make him a support. He's got healing arrows. They do like a little bit of area of
True.
effect. And
I
fuck
can
it, maybe
see that. I
headshots
can
do
see
double
that.
the
I
healing.
can
You know,
see that.
give him those, give him a boxing glove arrow. And for his ultimate, he cooks a big pot of chili that heals your team and does damage to the
Okay.
enemy because it's too spicy. Seriously, like making somebody a support is just as easy as saying, all right, whatever, give him healing.
Yeah.
Who cares? It doesn't have to make sense.
Figure it out.
Rocket Raccoon is not a healer. Green Arrow and Black
Right.
Canary, of course, need a team up of some kind. Maybe she could like charge his arrows or something like that. I don't know. And if the Green Lantern in this game is Hal Jordan, maybe the two of them could ditch the match altogether and go on a road trip where he teaches them about the struggles of the working class. As for other Justice League members, you could also have Hawkgirl be a duelist. John Constantine could be a really fun to be like a lifesteal support type of character. Martian Manhunter could also be a really fun strategist that could like no-clip through walls and copy people's abilities. Aquaman could be a Namor clone, or he could lean into his durability and make him a tank. And Mr. Terrific could be a
Like
support character with different
multiverses.
T-spheres having different effects and healing. If Batman is going to be a strategist for this game, I think that Robin should be a duelist. You could go with Dick Grayson, but I always prefer to see him as Nightwing instead. Tim is always a safe pick since he's
They
personally
could
my
have
favorite Robin.
the
But I think
individual
Damian Wayne could have
Robins.
a lot of really fun potential in a game like this. He could use
They
his
are
bird
different.
rings and also
They
his
have
sword
different,
and jump
like,
around. Damian is someone who
weapons and
struggled a lot initially to be part of
ways
the
of
team
fighting.
and really kind of fends for himself. So it might be fun if his gameplay and his abilities reflect that. He could borrow some of the Lazarus Pit from his grandfather and
I
have
mean,
a pod down that heals
Injustice
himself and
has
his teammates, sort of like Soldier
Nightwing,
76. Really let him be
Robin,
that solo
and,
duelist like dream character, you know? And for his ultimate, he could call in Goliath, his pet dragon, and ride him around and smack
Todd,
him. While we're on the
Red
topic
Hood.
of Teen Titans characters, I'm sort of 50-50 on whether or not Cyborg should be a strategist or a tank, and same for Raven. Cyborg looks the part, being the big beefy guy of the Titans and the Justice League, but he could do some really fun stuff using his tech to heal people, and maybe he sort of like hacks
True.
health packs like Sombra. And Raven is the one who can literally make force fields, so she also makes sense to be a tank. I'm a big
Yeah.
believer that the label of the roles aren't necessarily as important as how the character is used. Like when Sue Storm was revealed, I saw a lot of people mad that she wasn't a tank despite her powers being force fields. But we learned on
Right.
release that she has
She
the
does
ability
have
to
a
make
shield.
giant shields for characters that even heal you. That blurring of the roles, especially once you throw in team-ups into the mix, is part of the reason why I'm having so much fun with Rivals and why I don't want it to become that restrictive, especially with something like
Yeah.
the role queue. And then you have Starfire.
I mean, I
who could be a
definitely
really fun
think that they're
duelist, or
pretty,
Beast
like,
Boy, who could make a really fun
some
tank,
characters
like switching between
definitely
animals.
just
And if
one
Wonder Woman's going to be a tank, and if Green
type,
Arrow is going to be a strategist, then Donna Troy and Roy
it's
Harper
good to
could
have
both
some
be
characters
duelists.
that
They're
blend
not
the line.
explicitly Teen Titans members, but Supergirl could also be a really fun duelist compared to Superman's tankiness. Blue Beetle could go either way for me. Duelist makes sense because he can like generate different weapons, but you could also do some fun stuff with a Scarab armor and make him more of a tank. Cassandra Cain needs to be in there as a duelist. And you know what? Throw in Red Hood for the Punisher mains out there. Don't say I never did
Yeah.
anything for you. But make him a support. I'm kidding. That was a joke. That one was a joke. I've said it before, but there's one thing that Marvel Rivals is seriously lacking in, and that's villains. Literally, the name Rivals. There aren't that many rivals in a game called Marvel Rivals. The only
Yeah.
straight up villain on the roster is Hela. Characters like Loki, Venom, and Magneto don't really count and haven't for decades. at
What do
this
you
point.
mean
But
they don't
DC has such a
count?
wide array
Magneto's
of amazing
definitely a
villains at their
villain.
disposal. Pretty much every character has an entire catalog of rogues, and I'd want this game to pull heavily from that. With the first being Joker. Listen, I'm sick
Gotta
of the
have Joker
Joker.
in
I'm
the
tired of DC shoehorning him into everything like the Suicide
Yeah.
Squad game.
They
and
always
Injustice,
make him
despite
like
the fact he
that
has no business
spare
being there.
DLC
Not only does he
character.
not really fit the types of games, but he's literally canonically dead in both of them. And just in general, there's always been such an oversaturation of Joker in all DC media, and it finally feels like we're getting away from that, and I don't want to return to the Dark Ages.
Are we getting
But David
back
Zaslav
to
has a
that?
gun pointed at my head, and he says if I don't do it, he's gonna cancel another Batgirl movie. Joker could be a really fun strategist type of character, except not in a healer type of way, but more in a chaotic asshole for the other team, and maybe kind of your own team kind of way. He could leave traps and bombs around the map, launch people away from the objective, and stun people using his Joker toxin. He wouldn't be very good at getting kills, but he could just
Kinda
make
like a
life
demo
so
man
much
type
harder
thing.
for everyone else involved, which is very on brand for Joker. Another fun duelist could be Lex Luthor. He could be your resident diva or Penny Parker type of character, where he's in a big neck, but then when he dies, he turns into a little guy with a gun. Because that's all Lex Luthor is, really, at the end of the day. He's a little bald man with a gun, right?
Dude, definitely
There's nothing
fit.
to him. Maybe he could work like
more.
Wolverine, and his damage is based on a percentage of max health. At first, everybody thought that Wolverine was the worst character in the game. Now, a lot of people are seeing his role as a tank buster, and that's been a lot of fun. And so, if Superman is that flying tank, then Lex could be the anti-Superman pick. Maybe he could shred through his health and his shields, and maybe even have
that makes
anti-air
sense.
abilities that knocks him and other flyers out of the sky. Similarly, Captain Cold could have a lot of CC moves to stop speedsters like the Flash. He could freeze people, slick the ground to make his team move faster, but also slow down the enemy. You could
Maybe
just make
make
him a
him a tank with
strategist
the
and say his
ice
cold
wall.
gun also heals like Luna Snow.
That
And
would
for his
make
ultimate,
sense.
maybe he could do something like May, where he creates a big blizzard that freezes everybody. Or fuck it, maybe he just does a little K-pop dance and heals everybody. Doomsday would be a really fun tank. His whole thing is getting more powerful and durable with every fight, and so maybe each time he dies, he comes back with a little bit more health. And maybe his design changes a little bit each time too, getting more spikes and armor. And if there's destructible environments like in Marvel Rivals, it could be really cool if he's able to pick up those pieces of rubble
Oh,
and
that'd
throw
be
them at
fire.
people. As for other villains, Cersei could be either a duelist or a strategist. Atrocitus could be a really fun tank. Destro could be a fun duelist so long as you keep him away from any schools. And I
Okay.
really love to see Count Vertigo get more spotlight. He's one of my favorite Green Arrow villains, and he never seems to get the credit he deserves.
I
Because
never
that's
seen
been my
that dude
favorite
before.
aspect of Marvel Rivals. It would have been really easy to just take the cast of the movies and all the A-listers and throw them into a game and call it a day. But instead, developer NetEase is
Squirrel
pulling
Girl,
from some lesser-known
Iron
elements from the
Fist.
comics with its roster. Characters like Magic and Squirrel Girl and even Jeff the Landshark are now
Magic,
essentially
yeah.
household names purely because of this game, and that's really exciting. And I'd want to see something similar with DC. We're getting Crypto finally in the movies, but I'd also want to see Detective Chimp and Dex Star, other Lanterns characters
Star.
like Larfleeze and Saint Walker. There's your iconic Batman villains like Two Crow and Scareface, but what about the wacky ones like Crazy Quilt and the Penny Plunderer? We could have a whole season devoted
Polka
to the
Dot
Doom
Man.
Patrol like we are with the Fantastic Four.
Oh.
I'm gonna need them to figure out how to make Danny the Street a playable character. I don't care what it takes. I need it to happen. In some ways, it's kind of worrying for your underground, hyper niche favorite character to suddenly become a cultural icon and all the mischaracterization that comes with that. But at the same time, it's opening up the floodgates for people to get interested in the world of comics and reading these stories, which, if you ask me, is the most.
I would have
important
never
part. As
known
of
about
late, DC's
Magic
gaming
before I
catalog
played Marvel
hasn't
Rivals.
hit
Like
the
now, I'd
same
be
highs that it used to.
Magic's
They
like
have
my
this huge library
second
of
duelist
characters
main.
and
Pretty much
stories
my
just
first
waiting to
duelist
be
main. So it's
explored
like
in the medium.
fucking
But right
suck
now,
with
it
Winter
feels like they're
Soldier.
not fully tapping into it. The new Arkham VR game was great, but Gotham Knights and Suicide Squad fizzled out, and Multiverses was supposed to be WB's answer to Fortnite before they came crawling back with more DC.
It was more like
Use
a
creator code
Smash Bro,
TroyBoy17,
but
by the way, please.
yeah, fuck
It
Fortnite.
genuinely, it really does help. But we still don't have a Superman game after all these years, or a Flash game. Hell, I'll even take a new Injustice at this point. And that Monolith Wonder Woman game is nowhere to be seen. Seriously, it's been 3 years. I'm worried. Is she okay? For years, the Arkham series elevated DC games from
I think
just
we are
games
getting
about
a-
Batman into cultural landmarks.
a trailer
And it's
for
kinda
Wolverine
disappointing
soon,
to see
so
it fallen
maybe we'll
so
get a
far
trailer
thanks
for
entirely
Wonder
to
Woman
shitty
soon.
decisions from WB. Whereas Marvel is succeeding in that very same space,
I think
not
they
just
were
with
announced
Marvel
at the
Rivals,
same
but
time,
also with
around the
Insomniac
same
Spider-Man.
time.
Things very well might be changing with James Gunn's DCU, which is supposed to connect film and TV and video games together, but I hope we're still able to get side projects in the same vein as Rivals. Not just because I want to play Overwatch as Superman, but also to kick these characters back into the limelight that they deserve. But what do you want to see in a DC Rivals type of game? What are some
DC
characters that I
always
missed
getting
that you think
hoed.
should be included?
Alright, so it's a cool video. It's more in depth than Dan Boy Wonder's video on just like the narrative side, but like he also didn't go too in depth on how the characters would play compared to like the Marvel Rivals characters. But if you do want to see a video that does go a bit more in depth on what a Mortal Kombat Marvel Rivals roster would look like, go ahead and check out my video on the screen right now. And I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, hit the like button. With that being said, I appreciate you guys for watching. Peace.